and we have a guest.
We have a guest in studio.
Yes, tell everybody who it is.
She is. We have Danielle MacLean. She is a real estate lawyer practicing in Dartmouth at DCL Law. And we're going to do a deep dive about, real estate law and how that practice works and just some misconceptions that, clients don't really think about.
Yeah.
And, as a mortgage broker, I can do the most amazing job ever. Maybe the realtor does a great job. But then sometimes, what clients, when they get to the lawyer, they don't know what they're doing. And we're going to talk about, some misconceptions and tips and tricks and all this other stuff.
And before all of that, Danielle, let everybody know a little bit about yourself. What drew you to this sphere of law? Why real estate law?
You know what? I chose real estate law because it's happy law.
Yeah,
Everybody's in a good mood.
Sure.
You're buying a house. You're getting money. I practice in some other areas, and this was where I landed.
Very nice. Very nice. And what would you say? What are some of the challenges to the job? Because everything's got its ups and downs. I'm sure with that is some challenges, right?
Well, every job has its challenges. I don't think anyone has a perfect job.
Mm-hmm.
But, I think
I love my job a lot.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm not saying I don't love my job, but there's days that I don't like it.
Yeah.
So I think it's like anything. It's there's good days and there's more good days than bad days.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough.
I think that's really, really what matters.
Yeah. I guess what I was trying to get at, Danielle, is that closing is, or rather, it can be, I guess, a great day, and usually is a great day for people. But I'm sure that from time to time, and this is about
things go wrong.
This is about education and awareness. This is something we've always talked about on this show.
And we're breaking down a lot of barriers.
That's right. So we want to empower people with knowledge. What advice do you give people when it comes to just some bullet points? These are some things you should know. You're buying a house, closing. Point. Let's hear some.
And before you do that, I think you should just give a little disclosure.
I was just going to say, this is my legal disclaimer.
Yep.
So, of course, we're just going to give you a little bit of general information, not legal advice. So if you have any questions, feel free to contact my office or your lawyer. Mm-hmm. So I would say the biggest thing for any client that's doing any kind of real estate transaction is you need to be organized and you need to be prepared. So it's not going to go perfectly 90% of the time. So you need to be flexible and you need to have those ducks. Ducks in a row, and you need to have the right professionals around you. And you need to know when to ask questions and have the right people to ask the questions too.
100%. I can echo that. Just like not every mortgage broker is the same, not every radio host is the same, not every lawyer is the same. I think that's really important. It's like find the right people on your team, but also know that at a big transaction like a mortgage or, doing a real estate transaction with a lawyer, not everything is always going to be perfect, and you need to be flexible and you need to take advice. I think that's the big thing. Yeah. What would you say, the number one thing that clients don't expect is going to happen, when they're buying a home?
Well, I would say most closing days, your walkthrough is not going to be perfect. So you have to have those reasonable expectations. If you're buying a used home, you're going to do a walkthrough of a used home.
Describe a walkthrough. What should you be looking for in a walkthrough?
Yeah, so a walkthrough is kind of your last chance to really raise any issues with the property.
Right.
So you're going to go in with your realtor and you're going to make sure it's in the same state or better as when you looked at it before. All their stuff is gone. In a perfect world, the appliances are clean, the lawn is mowed. People have different ideas about what is clean and what is fixed. So, a lot of times on closing day, we end up in a lot of back and forth over that. And, I'm always saying to my clients, nothing is going to be perfect. We need to be flexible if you want to get into this house.
It always amazes me when I think, because I've bought and sold a number of times, and with the day before you think, well, somebody's buying this property and I'm buying that property, and there's probably the tentacles could go out for 5 or 8 or 10 deals, right?
I call it the dominoes.
Yeah, that's right. And you think to yourself, all of that stuff has to flow properly. That's stressful, right?
It is.
Yeah.
And, advice that we give to our clients a lot is when you're trying to buy and sell, not to do it on the same day because you're asking for trouble, because your buyer has until the end of the day to get that mortgage money to
Get
you.
the money funded.
And if you've got closing problems or if they've got lending problems, then you're going to be in trouble. And you're right, the next person might be trying to buy, and you do have that domino.
The domino, yeah.
So ideally, you're going to buy first, borrow something we call a bridge that your broker or your mortgage specialist can organize for you. So you're going to borrow on that sale to use it for your purchase, so you're not in that panic trying to close everything on that same day.
And I love the idea of a bridge, especially, when you're moving and maybe you need to do some renovations. I think it makes a lot of sense. Now, not every lender will do a bridge, and depending on what your dates are, sometimes you're homeless. Sometimes you don't have a home for a couple days, and I mean, that works as well, but I agree. The sale and the purchase on the same day, that's really tough.
Every time it goes sideways, it's Murphy's
just
Law.
called Murphy's Law.
It'll happen, and I feel terrible for people. And we try to warn them, and sometimes it's unavoidable, and that's what you have to do. But it's really something to think hard about. In particular, if you're selling in another province and you're trying to buy here, so
the time change alone.
You got to remember the time change.
My.
So if I'm waiting on money coming from Vancouver, then we're gonna have a problem.
I think you just need to assume that it's going to be delayed. The other thing is, I always tell clients, like, if you're closing this day, don't expect you're going to get the keys until 5 o'clock, and don't plan on moving in.
Yeah.
Don't have
the
Val and
moving truck.
Eastlink there at 10
Yeah.
a.m. to try to hook up the internet.
Yeah.
Like, come on, people.
And that is a conversation that we have in all of our meetings, because people do have the expectation that at 9 a.m. when they do that
They're gonna get those
closing
keys.
walkthrough, they're going to get keys.
Yeah.
But you're not going to get keys until your seller has your money.
To deal funded.
Right.
Yeah.
And you're not going to get that money until the lender funds it.
Yeah.
So depending on the lender, that can be anywhere to first thing in the morning to kind of later on in the day. And then maybe we've got closing walkthroughs. Maybe we're waiting on insurance.
You could be waiting for the deed to come.
You could be waiting on the deed from the other lawyer. Maybe, in the wintertime, there's been times that I've been driving over to other lawyers' offices to drop off packages
In the
because
middle of a snowstorm.
because the couriers aren't running. So these are the things that you need to think about.
And recently, of course, we had this big tech outage. I don't know if you guys were affected by that in any way, shape, or form.
Some lawyers were. I don't know.
I would think some lawyers
Lenders, some lenders were
lenders and
delayed
lawyers.
funding. Funding. We did manage to close everything. Luckily, it wasn't a really busy day for real estate transactions for us, but we were late getting our mortgages funded. So you don't know what's going to happen. If you've got a day when there's big power outages or something, then that could absolutely
There
affect
can be
it.
storms, there can be fires, there can be floods, there can be IT outages. Anything could happen.
Well, the floods and fires, we had closings delayed 2-3 weeks.
Right. And I think these are things that you need to take into account in your mind.
Yep.
And really anything can happen. Now, obviously, I think 99% are usually okay.
It's amazing how smoothly it does go when you
But
talk
very
about all these
rarely does a closing happen at 9 or 10 a.m. That's really the
Most
exception.
of our
Like 4
closings,
o'clock.
I would say somewhere between 2 and 4 o'clock. Generally, most times it's going to happen on closing day unless something goes really sideways. But it does happen sometimes. And again, that goes back to having to be flexible.
Right.
So if you want in the door and you're fighting over $50 credit to move garbage.
Come on.
Yeah. But it happens because people dig their heels in. And I get that. And it's a very emotional transaction.
It's not
for a lot
not
of
just
people.
business. For me, it's business. I get to do this every single day, and I don't have the emotional connection to real estate. But I also remember that this is people's home. And even when they're selling it, there's that emotional connection. It's like, well, everyone thinks that their house is the best and it's perfect and whatever.
Yeah.
Where the person that's buying it from you may not be on the same page.
Yeah.
This is where a great realtor comes in handy too,
Right.
though, because a great realtor can really stick handle a lot of those issues. So if you've got an experienced realtor that you trust and you have a good rapport with, a lot of times they'll clean all this stuff up before it even reaches the lawyers.
Exactly.
So they'll just say, "Oh, there was a problem, we fixed it. This is where we're going to go."
Well,
so that's a really important part of
You're bringing up a good point. I'm going to interrupt here for a second.
Sure.
Private sales
Yeah.
are probably the bane of my existence. I don't
Bane
know.
of mine too.
Okay. So you think private sales are going to be like easy breezy?
Yeah.
They're the hardest
Well, why don't we save that?
transaction.
Why don't we save that for our next segment?
We'll keep Danielle around.
Yeah, well, she's sticking around.
I
That's
love
right.
it.
She's not going anywhere. So we can talk about that. We can talk about closing cost and other things like that, utilities. And
I want to talk about how you can take a deed as well. Like, there's so much good things that we're going to dive into on our third segment here and second with Danielle. We're going to ask her some really great questions, so stay tuned for sure.
If you've liked what you've heard and you want to learn more, feel free to visit us online at teamclinton.ca.